Now there is a call for the Conservative Party to face a similar investigation by the Equality and Human Rights Commission over Islamophobia in their case. The Muslim Council of Britain has put in claims of about 300 people, including councillors, advisors and MPs, in a submission to the Commission, claiming there is a widespread Islamophobia problem. It also named Boris Johnson for dehumanising and offensive comments about Muslim women wearing the veil. This, of course, when he compared them in an article for The Telegraph to looking like letterboxes and bank robbers. Well, let's talk about this with Muqdad Varsi, who's spokesman for the Muslim Council of Britain. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Why do you believe that there is an Islamophobia problem in the Conservative Party?
What we've identified is that there is a large number of cases that we put together in a dossier which shows the breadth and the depth of the problem. And what we've seen, unfortunately, is what we call three different things: dismissal, denial and deceit. The first approach by the Conservative Party was to dismiss anyone who brought anything up, then deny there's a problem in the first place, then actually deceive the public. So we've had three types of things happen. For example, the chair at the time said, publicly proclaimed there are no complaints outstanding, but we knew lots of them were outstanding and he was shown to be lying. He said that they act swiftly on cases. We have case after case in the dossier that we put together where they haven't acted swiftly. And Boris Johnson, obviously, the Prime Minister, said very clearly that one bounce and you're out. But we have so many cases where people have been quietly reinstated and put back into the party. And individual candidates who are known by the party to have engaged in Islamophobia in different ways still made MPs. And these are real big institutional problems because they are leadership choices and a cultural problem in the society. And what we also have to recognize is that if you look at polling, Hope No Hate did a poll of the Conservative Party members, and 2/3 of the members believe the far-right conspiracy theory that parts of the UK are under Sharia law. Now, where all of these things come from is really problematic, and what we think is very important is not only these individual cases, but the culture in the party that has allowed this to happen and fester has to be dealt with quickly so that we can move on and we can have a society where people choose their party based on the politics rather than because they think there's Islamophobia in the
governing party. Absolutely. Well, we know, the former party chairwoman, Baroness Seda Varsi, has said that Islamophobia ran deep and wide among Conservatives, and she's accused party leaders of allowing it to fester. This is the thing. The arguments against Jeremy Corbyn in terms of anti-Semitism was that, that he himself had in some way inspired a lot of people who were anti-Semitic to join the party, to become new members, and that no action was being taken, or action taken very late in the day, if at all, against people. And this is now the concern with the Conservative Party. Certainly, I certainly have not perceived there to be the same level of problem. And there is an issue, and we'll come on to this in terms of what we mean by Islamophobia. I'm not entirely happy with that word, which it's a kind of newly invented word. Anti-Muslim hatred, I think, is a probably better description. Some of the things that you've identified are, I don't know where anyone could even have a query over this. A former council candidate commenting on the death of a Muslim shopkeeper in a post saying, one down, 1.6 million to go. In another post, they said, Muslims go away back to Pakistan, and from wherever you came from, you're not in a Muslim country, you're not wanted here. And one I just read out earlier saying a former councillor again claiming that Muslims don't deserve human rights as we understand them, partly because of their animal-like behaviour and partly because they reject our Western value system. This is out and out anti-Muslim hatred. It's bigotry, it's prejudice. Those people have no place in polite society, let alone in any political party. The question is how widespread it is and whether or not the leadership of the party is taking it seriously. Do you believe they are now taking it seriously? And if they are, is it only because it's become public?
I think that's, I think you've hit the nail on the head here. This is a real question. And for us, we've been talking about this for a while, and we don't think the party has been taking it seriously. And what we've seen, and actually what other senior members of the Conservative Party who aren't in government, Muslims who are there in the party, who've dedicated their whole lives to the party. These aren't people who don't care about the party or who might have a partisan reason for attacking the party. They really care about the party. And what they see is that only when things are made public does apparent action happen. So we have so many cases where in private things were raised, nothing happened. When a news story came out, there was a statement by the chair swift action is taken, this person has been suspended.
Yeah.
And then we find out 13 days later that person's been let back into the party.
Yeah,
And,
I mean, that is very telling. However, is there an issue? I mean, look, I don't think anyone with any right-minded person is going to have any issue with those people being, I say, hounded from the party and publicly shamed. And we're not talking about he said, she said cases here. We are talking about people, their own posts with their name above them, you know, the clear categorical evidence, as we used to have in the case of the anti-Semitism in the Labour Party. But when this often gets conflated, as it does, with, say, Boris Johnson's article in the Telegraph, in which he referred to women wearing the burqa and the niqab as looking like letterboxes or bank robbers. I have to say, I didn't like those two descriptions. He said it was to be a light-hearted comment, flippant comment. I would not use that language myself. However, I don't believe it's Islamophobic, and there are a lot of people who might be listening to this right now and say you shouldn't conflate someone being critical of a garment, which in itself dehumanises women by making them faceless in our society, with people who are expressing quite clear prejudice and bigotry against Muslim people.
Yeah, so of course there is a scale. Like with all types of racism, there's a scale, right? So you'll have stuff which is out and out incitement to hatred and violence, and stuff which is racism at a sort of more dinner table test level. And they're different levels and they have different consequences, and all of them have to be treated in a different way, because you have to look at things on a case-by-case basis. I mean, many Muslim communities might have had a very different view on understanding Boris Johnson's comments, and that's why it's in the dossier just mentioned as an example. But I don't want, I mean, we can look at individual cases, but for me, it's not the individual cases that matter. It is the scale of the issue. We've got 300 examples here. There'll be people who have different views on individual cases, and that's the right you'd expect them to.
But it's not a handful. No, but isn't the key issue is the party leadership failing to deal with this because the leader of the Labour Party, the Conservative Party, is considered by some to be Islamophobic. But did you think that what Boris Johnson wrote in that famous Telegraph article, did you think that was, using the word Islamophobic, do you think that was anti-Muslim bigotry?
Yes, I think yes, I did. And the reason I did is because, so let me just explain, because I know that there are different views on this, but I think it's quite clear. And the reason it is that he's not a satirist who's anywhere. So like any type of racism, the position of the person, the choice of the person matters. So the term letterbox is a term that's been used a lot by the far right to describe these people. What you saw after that incident were people who wore the niqab actually being abused on the street, and the term letterbox being used. In fact, I've spoken specifically to people who who wear the niqab, and they have told me how they have faced attacks being called letterbox since that incident, because it became that was popularized a lot more. And that's a real problem when you have a leader saying something which actually leads to hate crime on the street. That's something that really matters to people, and it really, really damages. And so the question of using language in the right way, obviously it's very different to saying, Muslims have to be detained or sterilized, all the other...
Yeah, but those, exactly. I understand you. I understand we're talking about different ends of the scale. But again, when we though, in the conversations about this, when there is a conflation between what is clearly bigotry and hatred, and incitement to hatred, as opposed to someone, I mean, bearing in mind the article he was writing, and again, I didn't like his choice of language. I wouldn't have used it myself, but I don't condemn him for using it. I believe in free speech. He wasn't inciting hatred against Muslims. He wasn't even condemning the wearing of these garments. He was laughing at the garments, which in my view, they should be laughed at. I think they are absurd, I would say, and obscene garments, in my view, and totally unsuitable for any human being to wear, let alone in a Western society. But he was actually in that article in the Telegraph defending the right of Muslim women to wear the burqa and the niqab. It was actually an article expressing very liberal views about the rights of Muslims to express their religious views freely on the street. And yet he's been accused of Islamophobia for that.
Yeah, no, so this is the point, right? Using certain terminology panders to a certain group of people. And when a senior politician does that, it has consequences on the street. We can't, this is how racism unfortunately works, that a senior person using certain language leads to people being attacked.
You think those people who would go up and shout at a Muslim woman wearing a burqa, you think those people have never abused a Muslim woman in a burqa before?
No, but what
They
we
just were
have,
suddenly inspired after reading an article by the Boris Johnson in the Daily Telegraph.
what we can say for a fact is that the number of incidents that were reported immediately after that newspaper article was significantly, I think, 375% higher than it was previously. What we can...
But no. But that's reports of, and reports of aren't necessarily indicative that we see reports of rape go up. But again, often because people are more willing to go to the police about it.
And we have specific incidents where people were citing letterbox after the incident. A patient in a doctor's surgery being attacked and being called a letterbox. We have people on the street having, people being attacked and being called letterbox. This term was used by elements of the far right immediately after. And it was something that was already within sections of the far right. And we saw more and more cases, 375% increase in reporting. Now, you can argue that some of that might have been because it was more public, but a spike of that scale is very, very unusual to see.
Okay.
And when there's hate crime on the street on the back of something, obviously it's something that needs to be reflected on. And I agree, it's a different part of the scale, but we shouldn't ignore it and recognise the role that politicians play in
setting the tone. Miqdad Vassi, really interesting to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.